here together with you all. That's what I would like to thank you again. I can see sitting in the front row, the professors, the doctors, and the team of the academics over here, and together the students, fellow students, and ladies and gentlemen. So I am here to express my honor and to express my friendship with the university as well. Before coming into this hall, I went to have the courtesy visit with the Honorable Vice Chancellor in his good office over there. We have had some very fruitful discussion to have the extension of some sort of relationship with Nepal's university, with this beautiful university, highly acknowledged university, Kalyani University here in Kolkata, West Bengal. So we will definitely work on that as well. So this is the opportunity for me as well. So talking about the colloquium today, so I wish all the best and successful for this whole year as highlighted by Dr. Professor Sumit. So the whole year it will be the discourse of the diaspora. That's what the university is planning. I wish all the best for that. So talking about diaspora and the things like that, I was also pondering what is a diaspora, talking about the diaspora again. While sitting on the dais as well, I was thinking, I thought that it's like, diaspora is like the flying birds, the migratory birds. As Sir has rightly mentioned that Ukraine, but the people are fleeing from there. In the history, if you go back, there might be so many reasons that people is scattered from one particular region, having one nationality, the language, the culture, the religion, the value, the beliefs, and all these things. They scattered somewhere. However, we are from the same origin. I know very well that one, with high regards for that. You can see in northwest Bengal, isn't it? So Nepali diaspora is spread up to Sikkim, and then beyond that, Myanmar also. So Nepali community, almost more than 100,000 Nepali communities, those are still there. They speak the same language I speak. So that is how Nepali, even in Bhutan, my counterpart, the Consul General, His Excellency from Bhutan, he speaks very good Nepali, then even better than my Nepali. So that is there. So Nepali diaspora, it's like that. It's like, I used to say, if you see the map of India, it's like a person sitting in a yoga posture. You can imagine the posture of like that. And on the top of that, the head, that is Nepal. We are not that much far from here. All the students, I would like to say you, almost 600 kilometers traveling from here to the Nepal's border point, you can easily reach. And it's your home as well. So we almost follow the language. Hindi is very well known, well spoken in Nepal. Everywhere Hindi, I think, wo to kaam chalta hai. Sorry for Bengali, because I could not catch up in a better way. So even still, I'm trying to catch up. Bengali, it's a beautiful language. Almost 30 to 40% of the words are very similar in Nepali. So it's like that. So diaspora, talking about that one. So thank you very much for welcoming me in this inaugural session of the colloquium, that the diaspora, the theme you are focusing on that, and the Nepali also. It's a diaspora for Bengal as well. So from Siliguri north onwards, the people, the taxi drivers, the shopkeepers, and all the people, they speak Nepali. So from there to Sikkim, up to Sikkim and then beyond. So it's well spoken over there. So it's like that. And talking about the relationship between India and Nepal, and it's with West Bengal, Kolkata, and my office, and then Nepal. It's very, very historical, and we are well connected with each other. I used to say, Nepal and India, we have the treaties and conventions, covenants, and so many the agreements. Those are the governing the tools and tenets for the relationship. So we have most of the younger generation in India, in Kolkata also, I found that they still do not know that they can easily travel to Nepal. They don't need the passport. They don't need the visa. You need simply the government identity card provided by particular government entity. So that is there. So it's very near as well. And then we share the similar aspirations, similar culture, similar, so many things, similarities. If you make a list, it will be a full page of the points. You can make the similarities like that. So that is how I request. That is why, please do try to explore, and then explore your friendship, better friendship, strong ties with Nepal as well. Nepali, because this is the right forum for, because the topic is diaspora. It's because of that also. So I see India is doing a lot in education, even better. I can proudly say that. I appreciate that. It's doing better. Yesterday, I saw the data, that big data. India is now world's 5th largest economy. It was United Kingdom. UK was there in the 5th position. Now it has gone to 6th, and India is, I think it's heading to 4th, 3rd, or something like that. So similarly, the education sector is contributing for the economy, to the GDP. So the universities, the academia, you students, you are the A's. You represent the modern day of India. So that's what you are getting better opportunities, obviously. So I would like to congratulate for all the university professors, doctors, because I know that to be a professor, it's really the highest position. The professors, the teachers. I was trying to be a best teacher in Nepal. I was trying, but I came to another profession. It was a little bit, I mean, the difficult story I have. But my interest was to be one of the best teachers in Nepal. But later on, I came to another career. I started my career from the civil service of Nepal. It's very similar, like over here in IAS, the UPSC, and then West Public Service Commission. We have the Public Service Commission, the board exam, the same, we have to compete for that. And then we commissioned for that. So it's very similar like that. However, here in India, it's a really very strong system of bureaucracy as well. So once again, my pleasure and my appreciation for welcoming me in a beautiful song, Nepali song. Rato Rani Phule Jai Sajama, Timi Bhuleu Kaleji Majama. That's a beautiful rhyme. And then Kanchilai Gumaune Kathmandu Sahara. But Sahara, that means Kathmandu city, the capital city. I am from Pokhara, one of the town which is away from 200 kilometers from Kathmandu, western part. It's a beautiful city. You can see in the YouTube or Google, or but these days you have so many informations disseminated through the internet. So you can easily grab the informations on your hand. So beautiful song. Thank you very much. Once again, my high regards for the Vice Chancellor sir, and then Professor Sumit, and the professors, the dean in the dais, and all the honored professors, teachers, students, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. With all these words, because of my another program in Kolkata, I have to leave a little bit early. It's because of that I requested. Thank you for the wonderful arrangement of this session, inaugural session. Wish you all the best. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. I would like to thank our guest of honor for giving his valuable time and sharing his thought to sparkle our event. Before I request to speak Professor Ananda Mitra, our special guest, may I request Dr. Pratip Chattopadhyay to give a brief introduction of the speaker.
Thank you. It is a proud privilege to welcome Professor Ananda Mitra in this inaugural session of the colloquium, International Colloquium organized by the Center for Studies of Bengali Diaspora. Now, we often hear that the diasporas have a longing to come back to their homeland. And I think Professor Ananda Mitra personifies that phrase, because very often, whenever we request him in various functions, seminars, even in webinars during pandemic, he was readily agreeable to come or to be online and to interact with all of us. So he is a professor of communication at Wake Forest University, Winston-Salem, United States. And he has held many a position in that university, which actually fits him for this diaspora kind of event. He has been a faculty advisor for South Asia Students Association, faculty advisor for Hindu Student Association, faculty director, India Study Abroad Program, and he has also been the chair of collegiate senator in the academic year 2019-2020. Now, Professor Ananda Mitra has been here at University of Kalyani in December 2019 to grace a capacity building program organized by the Department of Political Science and ICSSR New Delhi. And he even after that he presented virtually in a seminar conducted by this very center. So he is very close to this center and to our university, and it's again a proud privilege to welcome Professor Ananda Mitra, and we, as always, we are eager to hear his insights on the topic. Professor Ananda Mitra, please.
Thank you, everybody. This was a big pleasure to be here today. And thanks for the organizers, Dr. Mukherjee, Vice Chancellor, Dean, and your Honorable Consul General. It's nice to be here in this fantastic company. Kolkata University has a special place in my heart because close relative, my elder cousin sister's husband, Arthat Banglate Amra Jake Boli Jamai Babu, he used to be a teacher here in the Department of Botany, I believe. Some of you might have even heard of him. He's passed away a couple of years ago, but Kolkata is a familiar place. Love the place. So as Pratip said, it's a great pleasure to be here and to talk to you about diaspora. I'm going to give my background just a little bit so that this can be contextualized. Without context, it would not make much sense. My background, some of you would know, is from Kolkata. So I grew up in Kolkata. I went to a school called Calcutta Boys School and then went on to get my degree in engineering from IIT Kharagpur. After which I left India, as many people did in those days, and went off to study in the United States and continued to live there and have been living there for many years and perhaps will be living there for the foreseeable future, with, of course, the fact that I spend a significant amount of time also in Kolkata and particularly in India, particularly in Kolkata. So the idea of diaspora is not theory to me, I live it. And that's partly why I think I would be talking about it in not only a theoretical sense, but to some degree in a very personal way. And I'm really glad that this center has come through here in Koleni, because I think it's really important to understand this process and to understand the process of diaspora, the term that is, I believe, heavily abused right now. Everybody wants to use this term and manage the term to suit the needs of the day. But to understand diaspora, you have to understand the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, we hear or we learned about a man called Moses. Those of you remember Moses, just to give you a quick history of Moses, a legendary person, a person whose evidence is somewhat lacking anthropologically or in terms of finding out exactly who he was. But here's the story of Moses, which gives us the story of diaspora. Because the word diaspora, although it is being used as a singular term more and more, really has an adjective. And that adjective is Jewish diaspora. The people of Jewish origin, to whom the land of Israel was given by God, according to the Old Testament, were taken away to Egypt. And in Egypt, under Pharaoh Ramesses II, as the legend goes, it could be legend to some, religion to others. As it goes, Moses, a son of a Jew, who was brought up as an Egyptian, eventually realizes that his people are enslaved in the land of Egypt. And those of you know the story, he brings them across the Red Sea, which is parted by God, and then he goes back into Mount Sinai, and the people of Israel go back home. The return to home happens in biblical times. Now, if you move away from the Bible after that and you go to real time, so to speak, the Jewish people in Hebrew, actually it's a Greek word called galut, G-A-L-U-T. The word galut is the origin of the idea of diaspora. What Galut said, and if you look back and look at again at the Testament, Old Testament, and look at some of the Torah writings, you realize that diaspora for the Jewish people, when it first started, was not a negative construct. It was indeed a positive construct, because God evidently told the Jewish people that go forth, live among the Gentiles, and teach them about Judaism. It was not a moment of evangelism, but to say that, look, we have no land, and that is okay. We will be among other people, the Gentiles as it is, and through that process, we will retain the bloodline of Judaism and the history of Judaism and the tradition of Judaism. That is the beginning of diaspora, Jewish diaspora. What happens after that to the history of the world is well known for the Jewish people. They are landless. They never have a land. They are spread all over the world. Eventually, it leads to the horrors of Holocaust, right? That's what it leads to. And eventually, after that, when the British finally create the land of Israel or the country of Israel, that is when the Jewish people can go back home, in a manner of speaking. So, diaspora is about movement that has been brought upon you. That is the history of diaspora that follows in about 700 BCE, 700 before Christ, where we start to see the people of Jewish origin being moved around all over the world. That is the beginning. Are there other diasporas? We are focused here on the Bengali diaspora. The Bengali diaspora comes in the history of diaspora as a minuscule moment in its history. Other diasporas, movement involuntarily, forced to be moved out of your putative land of origin and put somewhere else. When I teach teach a course on diaspora at Wake, I ask my students, everybody knows about the Jewish diaspora, then I ask them, think about histories where people have been made to move from one place to the other against their will because they had no choice. What comes to mind is the African diaspora. The African diaspora, when the white slave traders went to the west coast of Africa, picked up slaves and brought them back to South America and North America to work on the cotton fields of North Carolina and South Carolina, which is where I'm from, North Carolina. That brought the Africans to the United States. Today, we call them African Americans, we call them Blacks, we call them, they become a demographic force to deal with. That is another diaspora. Involuntary movement, bound and shackled at the bottom of slave ships. They came from the West Coast, did the crossing, and came into the United States. Other diasporas? I'm giving you this history because I hope the history contextualizes where we stand. You would probably not know this, but some of you might. When the Europeans came into North America, they encountered the Native Americans, and that was a problem. A problem because the Native Americans owned the land and the white Europeans needed the land. So what did they do? They created a genocide. And that genocide has gone down in history, not only as a genocide, but an amazing story of forced movement, the Trail of Tears. The the Native Americans of the Carolinas, of Virginia, of the Eastern Coast, were forced to walk from there to Ohio, back into Oklahoma, the Trail of Tears, thousands perished, right? Diaspora, forced to move. So what happens in diaspora historically is it is involuntary, which is what makes the Bengali diaspora a very, very different thing. Nobody made me go to the United States. Nobody put a gun to my head and said, march, walk through the cold winters of Alabama, through the cold winters of Ohio, walk all the way to Oklahoma. Nobody asked, nobody did that to me. Nobody shackled me at the bottom of a ship and said, I will take you to a new place and you'll be whipped to work. Nobody did that. Nobody did a situation where people would be picked up from the Warsaw ghettos, put in cattle cars and taken to Auschwitz. That is diaspora. What we have experienced in the period after the war, by the war I mean the Second World War, is a new form of diaspora, which is voluntary movement. Movement because we choose to move, because we have the freedom to move. And that is the form of diaspora that begins to happen, not only for Bengalis, but for many, many other nations. And the site of this diasporic movement, to a large degree, has been what we call North America, Western Europe to some degree, because people wanted to go there. When the French gives the Americans the Statue of Liberty, and the Statue of Liberty says, bring us your, I can't exactly remember the words on the liberty on the statue, but when they say that, look, we will accept into our country people who are destitutes, people who need to build a new life. That begins a new form of diaspora, a diaspora where, as I just said, voluntarily and by choice, people leave their place of origin. When you look at the work of Arjun Appadurai, which I strongly urge you to do, Arjun writes a lot about diaspora. And Appadurai makes this point that, look, you leave your place of origin and you go to a new place and you call it your home. With that comes a set of responsibilities, a set of obligations, right? So the Bengali diaspora, the Indian diaspora, any of these diasporas are voluntary movements. But then what is similar, I would ask, or you would ask, between the Jewish experience and the Bengali experience? The Jewish experience for centuries and the Bengali experience for just a few years. Here's what's similar. The similarity comes from what we call the diasporic condition. So you have to draw the distinction between what is diaspora.
One small announcement, sir, sorry. The Honorable Consul will take leave of us now because he has to leave for some urgent business in Kolkata. So he will take his lunch and go with the Honorable Vice Chancellor. Now Professor Mitra will continue.
Thank you. Well, that's all right.
Please go for lunch. Now you continue.
Sure.
Yes, sir, yes.
Talk about Chinese diaspora something. Just
Sure.
I want to know.
Sure. Okay, so to pick up from what I was saying, so the idea then is not just the idea of diaspora, but the diasporic condition. The diasporic condition is what people like me experience, what people like the Jewish people who moved into New York, who moved into Berlin, who moved into London, into Venice, what they experienced. And there are a few elements of the diasporic condition that are worthy of thinking about. Number one, those of you who are interested, the diasporic condition demands that we keep in touch with the place of origin. Now, when I say the word in touch is not just a physical in touch, because sometimes you cannot. People who came away from Eastern Europe, or people who came away from Ireland with the times of the famine, they could not keep in touch with their place of origin. But what they do is they retain their cultural connection. They retain their language. They retain their practices, things that are done, things that people would do to retain who they were and where they came from. And that's what you start to see the Bengali diaspora doing. The Bengali diaspora, or the Bengali diasporic condition, produces things like what you will hear about this afternoon when Professor Bashobi Fraser talks about, I think she's going to talk about, and one of the persons you'll be listening to will talk about the Durga Puja across the world. Why the heck do we do that? Why the heck do we have a Durga Puja? I'm going back to North Carolina in a few weeks, and I'll be going to the local Durga Puja. That is the diasporic condition. That is the moment where you're saying that, look, I left, but I really didn't leave. I left the place, but I did not leave the culture. I'm not going to lose the culture. Now, notice, that is not a privilege that everybody has. When you go back to the African diaspora, the Black diaspora in the United States, they were forced to lose the culture. They were made to lose the culture. They all had to be converted to Christianity. They were not Christians coming into the slave ships. The Native Americans were not Christians, but they were anglicized. They were made to change, right? Now, what has happened with the voluntary diaspora is that forcible change has also disappeared. There's an expectation of integration, right? But within that expectation, there is still the freedom to worship as you want, freedom to eat the food that you want, right? And that is a part of the diasporic condition. But how long does the diasporic condition continue? That depends on, in this case, the Bengalis in diaspora. Do we teach our children the language? Very often Bengalis who are in diaspora, you don't even have to go outside the United States, go outside India to see this. A Bengali family bringing up a child in Ahmedabad, is the child learning the language? Because that's a diasporic condition. And that moment, if you are actually teaching the language, you're claiming, yes, I'm diasporic and I'm keeping in touch, right? Language goes away. Food goes away. Things that appear so banal, right? Food. Who eats what? I'll tell you my story. So I'm diasporic. And my son, who was born in the United States, is also considered diasporic, right? But is he going to retain that cultural connection? That depends on how that particular culture treats its own diasporic condition. The Jewish tradition is really worthy of looking at. The traditional Hasidic Jews that you would see on the streets of New York or in Los Angeles, they still have the beard, they still wear the black hat, they still wear the cap, right? Because they have kept that origin. They have retained that cultural contact, that practice. It is up to us as Bengalis in diaspora or Indians in diaspora to decide, are we going to do that? Or are we going to integrate to the extent that we will lose that original touch? That question yet has to be determined, because keep in mind one other thing, and I'll close with this. Let's open it up for questions. I like that much more than this speaking. Keep this in mind. The Indian diaspora, forget Bengali only, the Indian diaspora is relatively new. How new? It's about 100 years old. 100 years for the Indian diaspora. Sir, you mentioned about the Chinese diaspora. The Chinese diaspora is worldwide, although it has a greater degree of concentration in North America than in anywhere else. Why did the Chinese go to North America? They were not indentured labor, but in a manner they were labor. The Chinese were brought by the Americans, by the Europeans, from China to the west coast of the United States to work on the railroads, to build the railroad tracks, the railroad industry, right? The Chinese, however, did maintain their origins, their original traditions, right? And then the diasporic often, so the Chinese diaspora is older, obviously, than the Indian diaspora in the US, but we haven't had time yet to know how we will react, what will become of us. Think about it this way. I am considered a first-generation immigrant in the US, which simply means that I was born outside the US and I live in the US. That makes me first generation. My child is a second generation immigrant. My child is around 28 years old. When, if and when he has a child, that would be the third generation immigrant. So Indian diaspora, at least in the United States, is only 3, maybe 4 generations old. We haven't had time or test of time to see what exactly will happen. But the indicators so far are that Indians, Bengalis are trying to retain as much of the original culture as possible as it dilutes downstream through the generations. I'll shut up here. Questions? Ask some questions. That makes it much more fun. Floor is open. Yeah. Yeah.
So actually, yeah, I am engrossed with your lecture. So I would like to question you. With you, just you stopped there. What will be the future of this diasporic condition? How long it will continue to retain the heritage?
And that's precisely the unknown factor, sir. And it depends. The only way to answer your question is with evidence. And the evidence comes, as I keep saying, from the Jewish diaspora. So the Jewish people, in certain sectors of the Jewish people, have been able to retain this over many, many generations. Whether we as Indians can retain it is up to us. So there are two parts to that, which is, can we retain it? And the answer is very simple. Yes, we can. We have all the technologies to retain it, right? It's more so now than anywhere, anytime in the past. That is less important a question than, do we want to retain it? Do we want or have that sense of a nation, have that sense of a people that we say that, look, we are proud enough to say that even at the fourth generation level, our children can speak the language or read the language. Go to the Jewish people. They do know Hebrew. They learn Hebrew because if they want to read the Torah is in Hebrew, right? So I don't know an exact prophetic answer to what will happen, but I do know it's up to us.
I have one experience is that because it's not a problem, but the fact is that marriages are happening between Indians and Americans. Indians are marrying US citizens, so there is a mixing of culture. That is a fact.
He will answer both of them. Yeah. I think you can take all the questions together or one by one as you want.
It doesn't matter to me.
Please do that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
Talk about something in the last 50 years of Bengal. The future of work in times of work in India and Pakistan. West Bengal. Question from there. Then you will also in a hurry to go.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, my question is that how should we look at the concept of diaspora, either as a concept of cultural integration or as a concept that is continuously diffusing our cultural heritage? How should we look into that concept as a concept of diffusion or as a concept of integration?
A very good afternoon, sir. Sir, you have already said the positive aspect of diaspora. Is there any negative impact of diaspora? Because very often we see when many of them go to US or any other countries for their job purpose, and later they even don't come back. And when they come back, like I have seen one of my relatives, like their son, they feel hesitant to speak in Bengali. So how is that is a good to our culture, sir?
হ্যালো, যেটা আমি বলতে চাই সেটা হচ্ছে যে গানটা আমি গাইলাম, রাতো কুরানি ফুলে ঝাইসা ঝামা, একটু আগে যে গানটা আমি গাইলাম ওই নেপালি একটি গান গাইলাম, সেখানে স্যার ও আচ্ছা আচ্ছা আই এম সরি, অ্যাকচুয়ালি ওই গানটা মানে আমি যেটা বলছি কালচারালি যখন একটা গান বা কোনো কালচারাল এলিমেন্ট বা কোনো রিচুয়াল ইজ মুভিং টু অ্যানাদার স্টেট অ্যানাদার কান্ট্রি, তখন সে তার কালারটা কিন্তু পাল্টে যাচ্ছে। তো এইভাবে তার অথেন্টিসিটি কি থাকছে? মানে আমি কেন বলছি যে উনি আসলে গানটা নেপালি গানটাতে কাঠমান্ডু সাহারা ছিল, কিন্তু যখন আমার দেশে গানটা এসছে তখন কার্সিয়াং সাহারা হয়ে গেছে। তো গানের রূপও পাল্টে যায় যখন আমরা সেটাকে রিটেন হয়তো করছি, উই আর স্টেইং ইন টাচ, বাট সেই স্টেইং ইন টাচে কিছু কিছু আমার যেখানে থাকছি তার কালারও অ্যাড হচ্ছে। হাউ ডু ইউ লুক অ্যাট ইট?
these questions, four of these questions, and go to the same place. Your points are internet between people of, let's say, Bengali origin and somebody who is not of it. I put it very differently. Not of Bengali origin. Simply say not right. Your points are say that what is the integration or is the differentiation? It is neither. It is a condition that we have to experience. It is a condition that we have to experience. We can choose this to be an integrative condition, which goes back to the point that the lady in the back made, which is, why do these children not want to speak in the language? Isn't that what the point you just made, right? And that is the moment where the diasporic condition has been converted to one of rejection of the culture of origin, right? So that is not a moment of integration at all. When a person of Bengali origin chooses to marry somebody who's not of Bengali origin, I would not put a judgment call on that, right? But at that moment, we are saying that my diasporic condition is not as important as my condition in my place of origin. Going to your point, ma'am, about music, about practices, of course practices change, right? Unless they change, you'll not be able to integrate. Again, here comes the integration and the differentiation issue. Because remember, I still have to integrate over there a little bit. You know, I cannot continue to say that, look, I'm a diasporic Bengali and thus I will only do the Bengali things because I've chosen a new place of origin. So there will be certain alterations in the way we do things. Right today, I was coming with Dr. Dash and we were talking about food. So I'll make real examples. I literally have lived in the US for 37 years. And for these 37 years, I've been cooking Bengali food, right? That's what we still eat. We are not suddenly going and saying we're eating pasta or we're eating pizza only, but we have found a moment where we can integrate these two different kinds of food practices, right? But when I cook Bengali food, I do not get the ingredients that I'd like to use to cook them the way I'd like to cook them. I'm actually a pretty good cook, turns out, next time. But that being said, it has to change, right? And that change is a part of the diasporic condition. This condition, by the way, is actually on a continuum. Some, like the Hasidic Jews, have held on to the Jewish tradition very, very carefully. Others have moved on and have changed things enough that they still have some of their traditions, but have lost a lot of that as well. The last question from you, sir, about the movement in this region. I will preface this by saying that I am not an expert on that by any means. True. So I'm not sure whether you are posing a question or you're stating the fact that this is happening. Okay, so that's not a diaspora question. That's a political economy question. That's a politics question and an economy question. And therefore, I will say that any movement of people across borders, voluntary or involuntary, automatically, historically, there's sufficient evidence to show that it has an impact on both the places. There has to be an impact. Whether it's a positive impact or a negative impact is to some degree from the point of view of the viewer. I'll give you my closest example. When unfortunately, yes, I'll get you. Yeah, no, it's gone off. Yeah. So my example would be this. When Trump comes in and says that immigrants coming in the United States is creating harm,
right? That was his whole line. That was his whole political line. Somebody like me would say, seriously, I have caused you harm? Look at you, your kids are being taught by me, right? So get over it. I'm here and I'm going to stay, right? But the Trump supporter in rural Virginia is going to say, oh my goodness, this brown guy from India has come in and taken my job, right? It's a point of view and how you take that. That's a socioeconomic question. Have I contributed by being in the United States? I am not going. There is no evidence that I have to
Fine, that's
give a
it.
definitive answer.
So just one small observation before I ask Nivedita Shaha to deliver the vote of thanks. Actually, we will be winding up very shortly because this leaves us with only one more speaker from Edinburgh, Professor Bashavi Fraser. After that, everyone here will have a lunch packet, which is waiting outside. Okay. But let me point out one thing. Bashavi Fraser, who was listening with rapt attention to the address of Professor Ananda Mitro, has this to say about his speech. He is good, has some good example. There is one further point which he could mention. The carving out of Israel from Palestine has created one of the saddest episodes of the diasporic reality, displacement of Palestinians while creating a homeland for Jews. I think Bashavidi had momentarily, I think, lost her connection at that time because I think Professor Mitro did dilate on this point. Now there are 5 generations of Palestinians in refugee camps in Lebanon, and those whose homes are being destroyed in the West Bank cannot escape. That is another reality. So this is from Bashavi Fraser, Edinburgh.
And ma'am, I don't know if you are still there and you can hear me. I cannot agree with you more. I spent about pre-pandemic, I was working in the West Bank with Palestinian, displaced Palestinians, and I saw it my firsthand, and much of my research was looking at that question. Absolutely, I do agree, yes.
Now,
Thank you.
Dr. Nivedita Shaha will deliver the vote of thanks, and we will immediately go over to the next lecture, the last one by Professor Bashavi Fraser from Edinburgh. Now, Dr. Nivedita Shaha.
Before Dr. Nivedita Shaha comes in, I just mentioned that linkage of Professor Ananda Mitra with University of Kalyani was first done by Dr. Rajesh Das from Department of Mass Communication, Bardhaman University is also present. So we also thank Dr. Das for making the linkage between Ananda Mitra sir and University of Kalyani way back in 2019. So thank you. Now formal vote of thanks by Dr. Nivedita Shaha.
It is my honor to propose the vote of thanks. First, on behalf of the Center for Bengali Diaspora, Kalyani University, I thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir Professor Manush Kumar Shanwal, for inspiring and guiding us. This entire Diaspora Colloquium 2022-23 is his brainchild. Under his able leadership and guidance, we will march forward to make this program a grand success. I take this opportunity to thank our Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Gautam Pal Sir, too. I take this opportunity to thank our Honorable Consul General of Nepal to Kolkata, Mr. Ishor Raj Pondal, for gracing this occasion as the guest of honor. I'm also thankful to Professor Ananda Mitro, Professor of Communications, Wake Forest University, US, for being the special guest. Thank you, sir. I take this opportunity to thank our Dean of Arts and Commerce, Professor Amalandu Bhuya, and different officers of this university, our Register Sir, Assistant Register, non-teaching staff, and lastly, I thank you, my dear students. Without your support and cooperation, this program wouldn't have been a grand success. Thank you so much.
আপনি লাঞ্চটা খেয়ে নিন, হ্যাঁ লাঞ্চ করে এই দিবাংশু দিবাংশু বাবু কই? হ্যাঁ আচ্ছা। So now in the last speaker of today's program is Professor Bashobi Fraser, an erudite scholar, a poet, a literature, a prolific writer, and she is presently Professor Emerita of English and Creative Learning, Edinburgh, Napier University. She is the director of the Scottish Centre for Tagore Studies, Edinburgh. I remember when in 2016, we organized an international seminar here, which was the second event organized by the Center for Studies on Bengali Diaspora. Professor Bashobi Fraser was one of the speakers, and her husband, Professor Neil Fraser, another erudite scholar, chaired a session there. Another occasion when we had Bashobi with us was in 2019, when we organized a seven-day long workshop, a multidisciplinary workshop on migration for good life. And there again, Professor Bashobi Fraser was a paper presenter along with Professor Neil Fraser, who this time was a paper presenter. Then once again, we have Professor Bashobi Fraser with us. She has been recently awarded the prestigious title of CBE, Commander of the British Empire. She has made all of us proud. Of all the Bengali diaspora writers, no one, I think, has been showered with such accolades. And she's also India's unofficial ambassador abroad, who has held aloft the banner of India's honor of a banner overseas. She has written a number of books. She is an expert on Tagore studies, and today she is going to talk about Tagoreana in Scottish Centre for Tagore Studies. And with this, I request Professor Bashobi Fraser to please make her presentation. Professor Bashobi Fraser.
Good morning, and thank you, Shumit, for that very generous introduction. I do have a PowerPoint, and I'm just wondering how to share it. Is there a way I can do it? I think you have to enable me from there. Okay. Yes. Can you see it? And can you hear me and see the PowerPoint, and can you see me? Okay, then I shall continue. First of all, a very good afternoon, and from to people in India, and good morning to people in Britain. I would like to begin by thanking Professor Shumit Mukherjee, Director, Center for Studies on Bengali Diaspora, for inviting me to deliver the keynote address today, and to Professor Manush Kumar Sanyal, the Vice Chancellor of Kolkata University, for extending his welcome to me to speak at this Diaspora Colloquium, which is both a great honor and a privilege for me. I have been to Kolkata University, as Shumit mentioned, twice, and both were memorable experiences and very uplifting. I would also like to remember my friend Sharbani, who taught there, and I miss her today, Sharbani Chaudhary, in English. I have spoken about the Bengali diaspora in the past at the Center for Studies on Bengali Diaspora. And this time, Shumit asked me to speak about Tagoreana through the Scottish Centre of Tagore Studies. So that's what I will be speaking about, the story of the incentive behind the establishment of Scots, the events we have organized to share Tagore and his circle's thoughts and ideas in Britain, and analyze the impact of our efforts in relation to the Bengali diaspora and the host community. It's mainly through Tagore and his circle that we have taken the Bengali culture and our pride in our culture to other Bengalis, Indians, and the host community. And that actually has addressed the racism and given us a sense of pride, which has held well with the host community. So the question is, why Tagore and not other great minds from India? I think the answer lies in what Atul Chandra Gupta has said about the significance of Rabindranath in our grandparents, parents, and our generation's lives. And Scots has Rabindranath as its nucleus, with his vast circle as part of a centripetal force. Atul Chandra Gupta has pointed out that Rabindranath's compatriots have used his literary talents as the fortress of their dignity in colonial and post-colonial times. And as an Indian and a Bengali in Britain, Rabindranath's writings, songs, and dance dramas, his fiction, plays and essays, his educational methods, and his ecological thinking, evident in his pragmatic projects in his institutions, that has offered us a cultural richness which is sustaining, and ideas that we find pertinent to our lives today for our next generation and their successors. And I can see that Debjani is with us, and Professor Mitra is also with us, who are part of the Bengali diaspora abroad. Officially, it all began, sorry, I'm just trying to now do the slideshow. Sorry, yes. Officially, it all began during the 150th anniversary of Rabindranath's birthday, which the government of India was celebrating with fanfare in Britain, in India, Bangladesh, and across the world. It was then that I applied to the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, the ICCR, for their support. Their support was instantaneous. And the then director, Mr. Suresh Goyal, a visionary with the willpower to act, signed a memorandum of understanding with our principal, Dame Professor and Vice Chancellor, Dame Professor Jones Stringer of Edinburgh Napier University, and granted us a Tagore chair for 3 years and 2 international senior research fellowships in November 2011. The wheels of a locomotive with promise and hope was set in motion for Indo-Scottish collaboration with Rabindranath as the inspirational figurehead. We were fortunate to have Professor Indranath Chaudhary as our Tagore chair, who introduced a module called The Idea of India, which attracted many enthusiastic students who went on to write dissertations on Rabindranath and his circle. I introduced several Rabindranath's texts to various modules: the modern novel, modern drama, poetry, and my colleagues have made the Essential to Go, edited by Radha Chakraborty and Fakhrul Alam, a key text for teaching modernism and postmodernist studies. To Go continues to be taught at Edinburgh Napier University as part of the English syllabus. We received the Binks Trust funding, with which we appointed Dr. Christine Kupfer as a research assistant for 3 years at Scots. Both Professor Chaudhary and Dr. Kupfer delivered lectures on Tagore and his circle nationally and internationally, and published multiple articles and books on Tagore, and with them, I have continued to do the same. When we were in the process of establishing Scots at Napier University, Tagore Centre London organized a 2-day seminar on revisiting Tagore in May 2011 at the University of London, which I chaired. And here you can see Joe, who was a great scholar on Tagore at the seminar, talking. We held our first international Tagore conference in May 2012 at Scots, with 60 delegates who came right across the world, from Canada to Japan, with a substantial representation from India, the UK, and Europe. Since then, we have had national and international seminars and conferences on Tagore and his circle, our last one being just before the pandemic year in February 2019, where the Vice Chancellor of Manipal University, Professor Vinod Bhatt, who had earlier opened the Tagore Center inspired by Scots, and had asked me to inaugurate it and do the inaugural lecture. So this, the last conference we had was in collaboration with the Tagore Center and the Gandhian Institute for Peace Studies at Manipal and the School of Communication. And this is the conference. This is an image of the conference on Samaj and freedoms, the relevance of Tagore and Gandhi's ideas today. Scots has established memoranda of understanding with various institutions in Bengal, like Bankura University, Vishwa Bharati, of course, Calcutta University, Rabindra Bharati University, but also abroad with Prague Metropolitan University. Many of you will know Blanka Notkova, who's a Bengali scholar, and that's her there. And recently we have established a memorandum of understanding with RV University in Bangalore and PK Foundation in Kolkata. So through the years, how have we taken Tagore and his circle, our Bengali heritage, to the wider community? So we have operated as a research and culture center. As a cultural center, we have organized concerts, exhibitions, dance recitals, talks, poetry workshops, and readings based on Rabindranath's work, reiterating his global significance. For example, at Napier, we gave an honorary degree to Sharmila Tagore. There's Sharmila there, and you see Joan Stringer and the Chancellor. I did the laureation. That's why I happened to be in that photograph. And this was in October 2012 as a cultural ambassador for Scots. And that's what Sharmila has been doing since then. Thus we have had, what have we done? We have had exhibitions like the Tagore Burns exhibition, which was a cultural program that was simultaneously held in and an exhibition with a seminar, a cultural extravaganza, one can say, at the Robert Burns birthplace Museum in Ayrshire and at Scottish Church College in January 2012. And then we had the Wayfaring Poet exhibition in the Scottish Parliament and at Napier University. And you can see the ambassador of India and the consul of Scotland from India in that photograph. We have also had, I'm just giving a few examples because otherwise it becomes like a list. We have had a concert by the maestro, the pianist, Abraham Mojumdar of the Calcutta Music Academy, playing Rabindra Sangeet, and it was a wonderful program where he played, his wife sang. We had a video running at the back. We also had a spectacular dance drama by the Dancers Guild from Kolkata, sponsored by the ICCR in Edinburgh and Glasgow, and on the theme of forests and Rabindranath's stress on Prakriti. So and that was in May 2014, but and also we've had another concert by Hans Biermisch, a Belgian violinist, who played 14 songs that Arthur Geddes, Patrick Geddes' son, Arthur Geddes was in Sriniketan for 2 years teaching at Rabindranath's institution. He was a geographer. And so he had translated with notations 14 of Rabindranath's songs, and Hans actually played in a beautiful concert. In June 2013, I was invited to do the keynote address at the Tagore Festival at Dartington Hall. And Dartington Hall, as you know, was actually started by Leonard Elmhirst with Rabindranath's blessings on the lines of Sriniketan, which Elmhirst had managed, directed, and taken forward. In May 2015, we launched our academic and creative peer-reviewed international open access journal, Gitanjali and Beyond. We have had 6 issues so far, and this is the 6th issue that you can see. You have heard of Samaj and Freedoms. So the issue took quite a few articles from the conference, which were edited by the presenters and resubmitted. As you can see, it is listed in various prestigious lists like the MLA Directory, the Directory of Open Access Scholarly Resources, ISSN International Center, the British Library, cross-reference. The list is long. After that, as I said, as a research center, we have had ICCR fellows visiting India from Scots, to conduct research in Tagore studies there. And their detailed research reports may be found at the Scots website, which is scots.org. Scots.org. We have also established a distinguished lecture series. And I'll just give you 2 examples. The list is long. One was a dual lecture, which was actually wonderful, by Professor Indranath Chaudhary and Dr. Kollan Kundu, who's the founder director of Tagore Center London. And they spoke about Tagore's impact in the West and the East. We've had another lecture by the former Bangladesh ambassador, His Excellency Mijarul M. Kais, on the artistic output of Tagore in the last decade of his life during the interwar years. He actually sang Tagore's songs, which was wonderful. So we were, as a research center, we were awarded the prestigious UKRE funding for a collaborative research exchange program between Scots and Vishwabharati, which was initiated in July 2014. It was interrupted by delayed funding, but then it was fruitfully concluded with 2 publications brought out simultaneously by Vishwabharati Press and by Luath Press in Scotland. So it's come out in both India and Scotland, which means the Indian edition is quite affordable. So I will encourage you to buy it if you can for your university. This was an interdisciplinary project which had the contribution of scholars from Scotland and India, traveling to the other country to do research and contribute to the project with their chapters, thus adhering to Tagore's idea of international knowledge exchange. The topic we had was the Scottish-Indian continuum of ideas, the relevance of Tagore and his circle. Scots has been taken to schools and the community, Scots has taken Rabindranath to schools and the community in Scotland through readings and workshops, and continues to organize knowledge exchange and knowledge transfer programs. But after I took early retirement and was made Professor Emerita, I remained Director of Scots, and we decided that this was a watershed moment for us. We needed to take Scots out to the community, to the wider world, and today she is a registered charity, and with the Scottish registers, independent, which means she still works with Edinburgh Napier University. She can work with other institutions, she can work with individuals, she can work in the community without any restraints. And if you go to Gitanjali and Beyond and Scots to Go website, you will find the charity number there. So that was a watershed moment enough. So I would like to say that I have been giving quite a lot of lectures right through the years, and I'll just mention a few very recent ones. So I did a lecture at the Edinburgh University Centre for South Asian Studies in collaboration with Scots, where the whole world meets in one nest, and this was in November 2019. I was invited to do the John Masefield lecture on Tagore as a Renaissance man by Poetry Association of Scotland at the Scottish Poetry Library, and this was just before the pandemic hit us in December 2019. During the pandemic year, we had COP26 in Glasgow on the climate crisis, and there were 2 zones: the blue zone where all the politicians met, and the green zone where all the activists who really and people affected met. And it was in the green zone that I did a talk on Rabindranath Tagore and the environment, and it was a blended event and it was packed. So I was really touched when Vidyasagar University asked me to do a lecture to start off the 75th anniversary celebrations of Indian independence. And I spoke on Rabindranath Tagore, the legacy and the legend in February 2022. I have for the World Federation of Robert Burns, and many of you know Purano Shei Diner Kotha as Auld Lang Syne. You also know E. Banks and Brace, which was adapted as Pule Pule Dhole Dhole. So I was asked by the World Federation of Robert Burns on Burns Night to deliver the Rabindranath Tagore and Burns links, and I called it the golden thread of poetry. Because of the pandemic, Burns Night was delayed to April 2022. I have been a guest speaker at a new Tagore Research Center with Amrit Sen from India at the University of Valladolid in Spain. And there I spoke about confluence and creativity in Tagore in May 2022. And I was asked by the Manchester Literary and Philosophy Society, the Manchester Guardian, which has become the Guardian newspaper, has published regularly and followed Tagore's travels and notes on what was happening, and his famous letter after he rescinded his earlier response to Mussolini. So there I was asked to talk on Tagore's life and work. And at Bradford Literature Festival, I was asked to speak on Rabindranath and Rothenstein, and this is something you will like to hear. Rothenstein is a Bradford boy. ওখানেই জন্মেছিল. So they are going to do something big for the City of Culture 2024 in Bradford to show the links between Rabindranath and Rothenstein. So Scots has continued to collaborate, and with Glasgow University, we were part of the Being Human. We were actually funded by Being Human Festival, and there we contributed to COP26 through 2 panels on poetry and the climate crisis, Scotland and India. And as you can see from the topics were Rabindranath Tagore and Patrick Geddes, the Scot, who was asked to provide plans for Vishwabharati, which he did. And they were very good friends. And I have edited their correspondence and introduced it. So they were interpreters of Earth studies. And the question was environment of modernity envisioned by Geddes and Tagore. And the second panel was Renaissance, Regeneration, and the Priorities of Poetry from the 1920s to the 2020s. How can poetry be of practical help in the climate crisis? And I think Rabindranath, who has been known as a poet primarily, though we know he was a polymath, would appreciate and did say how poets could contribute to an environmental consciousness. We are, you can see that, you can hear the recordings of both the sessions there, and academics and poets all contributed to that. It was really vibrant, and we are going to have a co-edited book with Alan Rieck and Louise again and me, with all the proceedings and the poetry. So now I come to the end of my talk. What are the ongoing research projects that Scots is conducting to take Tagoreana forward in Britain, in Scotland? We have, and with the Bengali diaspora, one is the research, translation, and recording of Tagore's songs in a major international project, and we hope to do it in English, so that Rabindra Sangit reaches a wider community. We also are developing an international Tagore network with Tagore centers in Germany, Mauritius, Serbia, China, India, the USA, and elsewhere. And as I have just said, we are working with various other institutions. But one thing we are doing is our latest project is a forestry project, where we are evaluating and analyzing the centrality of forests for the continuity of life on Earth. And we are doing this with Professor Devnarayan Bandyopadhyay of the Vice Chancellor of Bankura University. So the mission of the Scottish Centre of Tagore Studies, an independent charitable trust, is to continue to widen the understanding and appreciation of the environmental and educational legacy of Tagore and his circle in the modern world, and to emphasize the relevance of that work to us all, as Rabindranath remains the fortress of our dignity for Bengalis and Indians at home and abroad. And I hope you haven't found this too boring and too much of a list, but Shumit asked me to do this, so I have done it. I just want to end with one photograph that came out of my investiture in the national Scottish newspaper, the Herald. And there's Prince Charles. And what is interesting is Prince Charles spoke to me about his love of Rabindranath, his work and his ideas and his pragmatic projects. And he said he read Tagore with interest. So I think we have many admirers of Bengal's culture through Rabindranath's work and that of his circle. And that's my talk for today. I'm just going to show you a quick list of my publications on Tagore, books, articles, chapters, and that brings me to the end of my lecture. Just to say that the Manchester Literary and Philosophy Society are going to publish the lecture I gave there in June 2022.
Any questions from anyone? Any questions for Professor Bashavi Fraser? What an erudite, informative presentation she has made. So any questions? Well, food for thought is better than food for belly under some circumstances. I know you all are hungry. The lunch won't be denied to you. But any questions for Professor Bashavi Fraser? Not even one. Well, then it is for me to wind up. I thank Professor Bashavi Fraser profusely for such an informative, illuminating PowerPoint presentation, which has given us an overview of the various activities of the center of which she happens to be the director. And what really I found worth remembering was that slide of Professor Bashavi Fraser receiving that memorable, that unforgettable award from Prince Charles. And yes, she's getting a big hand here. Bashavi, I don't know whether you can hear, but the audience is giving you a very big hand here. And that was indeed a momentous moment in the life not only of Bashavi Fraser, but for the entire Bengali diaspora, and also for Bengal and India and the world at large. Because Bashavi Fraser is a cosmopolitan human being. She is a world citizen, constantly negotiating the dichotomy of two worlds. She always asks, which world do I belong to? Am I a Scottish or am I an Indian? But ultimately, she has been able to integrate in herself the two apparently contradictory identities, but ultimately they have been transmuted and sublimated into a higher synthesis. I think that is the best way in which I can pay tribute to Professor Bashavi Fraser. I thank, since she is the only speaker, so I have nobody else to thank, but I must thank the entire audience here. And let me just inform Professor Bashavi Fraser, Bashavi, today I must make this revelation that this program was initially scheduled on the 6th, but we had to defer it to the 7th because the CBCS examination was scheduled on the 6th. But as luck would have it, I wouldn't say ill luck, due to a festival called Karam Puja, a restricted holiday was declared yesterday, and the CBCS examination is being held now. I think it has just ended. So I was at a loss to understand as to, I really was at my wit's end as to what can I do? Can I ask a person as eminent as Professor Bashavi Fraser to lecture in front of an empty auditorium? Can I ask the Consul General of Nepal to deliver his oration before an auditorium where only the chairs and the microphones are the only spectators, mute spectators? But I would say, as luck would have it, We have had the unstinted participation from our Snehangshu Kantu Acharya Law College, students from the IAS Coaching Center, and outgoing students of my department who have finished their education here, semester 4. All of them have flocked in, and from other colleges from West Bengal have also taken the trouble to travel all the way to Kalyani to listen to this first Diaspora Colloquium. I would not thank you by thanking someone, however profusely I might thank you, I can't reveal my innermost feelings to you. আমি ধন্যবাদ দিয়ে ছোট করব না. All I can offer to you is the joy, the unbounded joy with which my life has been inundated today. So, আনন্দ চিত্ত মাঝে, আনন্দ সর্বকাজে, দুঃখে বিপদে শোকে, আনন্দ সর্বলোকে, জয় জয় আনন্দময়, মোরা সত্যের পরে মন, আজি করিব সমর্পণ, জয় জয় সত্যের জয়। ওং সত্য জ্ঞানমন্তং রূপং যদ্দিভাতি, আনন্দ রূপং মৃতম যদ্দিভাতি, শান্তম শিবং অদ্বৈতম শুদ্ধম পাপ বিদ্যম সর্বং সর্বে সর্বত্র নন্দতু।
অনেক ধন্যবাদ সুমিত।